This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lillipub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 19, Crafting the Chaos.
Okay. Well, welcome to Zettelcast number 19. And this is where our Zettelkastens are also our plus ones, and they have just as much of a say in the show as we do. So I'm Mel Jeffcoat here with my Zettelkasten clavis, which means key in Latin. And today we are going to start by talking about our backlogs. And some people call them a chaos box. Some people call them an incubator box. Some people just say the backlog. But it's wherever the cards that haven't been numbered or indexed or put into the Zettelkasten proper, where they live. And some people don't even have a whole spot for them, and they're just scattered everywhere. I have been that person, getting better. So I had some questions. So what ends up there? What tends to stay there and why? And do you schedule time to review it, or is it just an ad hoc thing? And any thoughts that came about from this exercise? Did you file anything? Did you find any interesting connections? So who would like to go first?
Yeah, well, I will. I will go first. And my confession is that this was a gathering of things, because my stuff was shamelessly, it was all over the place. So in an effort to come around that, this exercise made me make a concerted effort to gather up everything, at least gather up everything, and then come up with a process of sorting so I could then begin to actually index. So that's where I am, and that those are the answers that I have to those questions. Okay, so thank you, Mel.
Thank you, Deb.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can go. So my backlog is not really all over the place, but it's larger than I would like. And I would so I actually have backlog triage boxes.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
One box that I have just has some tabs numbered 1 through 9. And then there's stuff that is ahead of number 1, and there's stuff that's behind number 9. But still, what those 1 through 9 things give me is kind of reference points for stuff that eventually is going to go into something that has a structure already, like the Roanoke story, where I already know 1 is for my characters and 2 is for my world. And so when I'm doing my triage, I will at least know, well, this is part of this is a character thing. It's going into 1, but it's not a complete card yet, and I haven't indexed it yet, so I at least know where it is. And that ends up being a kind of a handy thing. It's like, well, okay, I've got a half hour. I could index some stuff, and then I'll look and see what's closest to being ready, what's ripened. And so that's been helpful. And then there are, those things that go in front and back is like, I don't even know where that's going. And thinking about, well, what are those things that end up like that? I would say, for the most part, they are things that come from personal reflections. So I'll have an idea, I'll write it down on a card, it doesn't have my reaction to the idea, and I feel like the card needs to sit for a while or something before I just say, because the reaction, if I do it too quickly, it feels a little false. So, but then it can sit too long anyway. But so it's waiting to become a mature indexable card. And the ones that are like that are not ones that come from books, because the idea is there, I capture it, I have my thing. That's the easiest way. But stuff that is coming through the ether, I have a little trouble making ready and filing. So that's a lot of what my backlog is.
Mhm.
And what
go
I
off
use
of
for
that.
boxes, these individual
go ahead.
boxes, just, you buy headphones, you buy little things, and they come in great boxes, and they have one part and another part. Yeah, they're one. Yes, exactly. They're perfectly sized. So I've got a
Yeah.
bunch of these, and I'm finding use for them all.
Serious. Yeah, I will totally play off of that. I do exactly the same thing. I like to think of them as hubs. So like this one is all of Scott's course material, which he keeps changing the numbers of the modules. I'm like, you're wreaking havoc on my box, man. Stop it. So I quit numbering. I started using titles. But I have a couple of different kinds of backlogs. So one is like this, which is just, these are cards that I've used at some point to work on a scene in my novel, and they've not made it back into where they live yet, partially because maybe I don't feel like the things that I used this to write are completely finished, so I don't want to put everything back yet. And I need to keep it all together because I know I'll go here to look for it. So that's one kind. And that lives underneath my screen that I'm looking at you. This is actually a napkin holder, but this is where backloggy cards live. So they just get tucked in there and eventually they all get clipped together. And then the other kind, I do the same thing. I park cards in front of or behind formal sections. And for me, those are usually like randomly collected things. Like this is something I jotted down about the founding of the Alfalfa Club at Yale. No idea what I'm going to do with that, but just those random bits and things. And often it's only like 3 words. Maybe a word I want to look up or something, and I just stick it on a card and stick it in the front. And so every couple of weeks I try to just thumb through those and decide, do these live in my story world? Do they live in my nonfiction Zettelkasten? Where could they go? But at that point they're not identified to go live anywhere, and they don't have numbers or anything yet. So they just kind of get tucked and parked. And then the third kind of backlog, which I shouldn't even admit this, but this book is full of cards that are just tucked in that have little thoughts or ideas or whatnot. So if I'm reading and actually processing a book, the main cards that are getting created go in the book where I got them. Because kind of like you, Julianne, I might not have a full reaction to it yet or know how it's relevant, but I know that I want to collect it. So I just make my card, tuck it in the book, and then when I'm finished reading the book, usually I will let it sit for a little bit of time. Again, that marination period is really important. Just let it all think, and then I'll come back, pull all the cards out, and then properly process them. But most of my books are full of at least half a dozen to a dozen cards tucked into where I captured them from. That way I know when I'm ready to think about that specific world again, I go back to the book and all the cards are in it.
Oh, very interesting.
Do you do
Well-
that instead of using a bib card? Have you
In addition to.
Oh,
The bib card is always in the very front, usually sitting on the title page. and then the main cards themselves. But you have to remember, so much of what I read is in some kind of service to my novel world. So I process and think about the books that I read a little bit differently than, say, someone who's reading, say, for academics, or, you know, a lot of the other reasons that people use a Zettelkasten and use Scott's system. So for me, it's a little different.
Okay, well, I'll show you mine. So I've got a whole chaos box that's pretty good size. I refer to it mostly as an incubator box, and it's got dividers because, you know, there's too many cards here. And this first group is called Current. Now, this is a group of cards that I'm actively using, not for writing my Zettelkasten book. That's a whole half drawer in my Zettelkasten. This is for what a podcast that's coming up, or, you know, some immediate use that I'm keeping these cards. Then my next group is empty right now. It's my put away file. When I finish my newsletter for the month, I usually have a big thick stack that I have to go back. I might not take the time right away. They dump in there. My next group, I'm embarrassed to say that I even have a category like this, but this is a category of cards that have got their whole card numbers and everything, but they haven't been through the indexing process yet. I have to go back and put them in the index and then put them away. And then my next category, talk about incubation, different levels. These are cards that, for the most part, are cards that could be placed. They've got their, you know, they've got their source material, my reaction, the tagline, where it came from. No card number yet. I've got to go back and figure out where they're going to go. And pretty darn, very overlarge stack of these. And the reason why these tend to build up is when I'm reading something that's not directly related to my field, for example, somebody's newsletter that's very interesting about maybe ways of comparing and contrasting things that come out of the Middle Ages. Thank you, Mel. Teaching law. I tend to make a lot of cards because I'm so fascinated by it, but I don't exactly know where they're going to fit into my world yet. So they live and grow. And this one I found in the middle of my stacks. It's a very old card that was just placed in my Zettelkasten with no number on it. So it's there. And
You
then,
have a crasher.
and then I've got another group that are what I would call cull and complete. This group of cards are not complete. They don't have taglines, or they don't have my reaction. They're just, I don't know if is this going to be worth keeping or not? Did I go a little overboard even making a note of that? Usually they do make it, but I need to have a block of time where I'm pretty bored to go back through these and decide, well, was that really worth it? So that is my crazy box. And to answer your questions, Mel, what sort of cards end up there? One of the biggest ones that end up having to be processed are cards I make for teaching the Zettelkasten. So I'll make sample cards, and then I've got to file them and put them away. And when I finished my minimalist course, I had a mountain of cards that all had card numbers that fit the sample Zettelkasten I was making, but didn't fit my Zettelkasten. So that was a big backlog. And then cards I make while reading newsletters, I mentioned those already. And then sometimes cards that didn't come out of my deep reading, they came out of casual reading. So I'm not sure whether I'm gonna, where or when they're gonna go in. And why do they stay there? As soon as I get that 36-hour-a-day plan approved, I'm sure I will get through them more quickly. It's been on the waiting for approval list for an awful long time. Do I have a scheduled process for reviewing them? Well, once a week, I'm on a Zettelkasten call that has a large number of people on the call. And the call ends up lasting many hours. That's my favorite time for catching up.
Nice. Yep.
Same.
Okay, I said enough.
Enough confessions for one day?
Yeah, right.
You're making me feel, I don't know about anybody else, making me feel much better. Because because you accomplish so much every single day and every single week. And I kind of build you up as perfect in my head.
Mm.
And you're perfectly imperfect now.
Oh, right. Yeah, come. You can come see my kitchen floor, and then you can also settle on the lack of perfection. When I crunch while walking across it, then it's time to do something.
Well, I took a cup before I met you all. I fainted in my kitchen, and for an unexplained reason.
Ooh.
And we called the emergency people, and the emergency people said, you know, we were discussing should we go to the emergency room, and the very tactful lead guy said, "I'm sure your floor is very clean, but you might want to get a tetanus shot." Oh, I know
Wow.
I need one because just look at it.
That's hilarious.
Oh.
Well, this didn't this activity didn't quite go in the direction I expected. It kind of went off in an interesting tangent. But first, I'll show you my box. Um, well, I bought a Levenger card wallet several years ago to carry things around with me, but it came in a really nice little box, which is not that big, but it's just the right size for the cards. And this is where I store most of my chaos cards that haven't been placed. And on purpose, it is a small box because it won't
Yeah.
let me put a huge number in there. I mean, I could probably still fit 100 cards in here. So, it's not a tiny amount, but it does give me some limits. And the sorts of things that tend to get stuck in here are there are some like just facts that especially like household facts, like how to reprogram the front door lock, which I had to look up when I bought the house, and I haven't needed it yet, but at some point I will, and I won't want to look it up again. So I've got that, but it's not made it actually into my Zettelkasten because it's still in this box. So I've got things like that, and I've got books that I read that, especially early on when I was really taking a lot of notes, even though they had nothing to do with anything that I'm really currently interested in. I mean, it was an interesting book, but I was just taking notes on sort of random things that don't have any connection. And so those haven't been placed yet. They're just sitting here. Um, and like I haven't set up a people box yet, so I've got like some conversations with people that I've made note of. So that's sitting in there. But my biggest backlog is actually sort of like what you do, Victoria, is with leaving cards in books. I have what turns out to be a bad habit of leaving the bib card in the book. Even when I finish the book, I still need to process the bib card and make the main notes from it. But I've left it in the book thinking, that would make it easier to go back to it. No, it doesn't, because I forget
No, it
that it's in there. I forget that I still need to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how many books are sitting in my shelf with filled out bib cards in them. I went and found the ones that I could. So hopefully that's all of them. We'll see. So most of my backlog now is bib cards that need main cards made. And I have gotten this is actually a cell phone holder. It's for classrooms. So it's got 30 slots in it, and it's just the right size to stick some, well, 3x5 cards. I don't know if you might be able to fit a 4x6. But you could also like take the things out to make deeper holes if necessary. But I've been using this to stage my various cards, bib cards. If I have a bunch of cards out when I'm writing something and I need to sort of spread them out and divide them into different clumps, then I've got these boxes to put them in so that they're not completely lost or scattered. So this has been a really useful thing. But
Victoria, you need to wipe the drool off your face.
I know. I'm like, wait, don't make it go away.
okay, these things are really cheap too. I mean, I think they're like $20 on Amazon.
That's
they're
crazy.
just
It's like the
like
new
pressed
coat
board.
rack for classrooms. Who knew?
Yeah, yeah, a cell phone box for the kids to get rid of them. um, but so in the process of looking through all of my bib cards that needed to be worked on, I found I've got several that are from journals that I had gone through and did bib cards for. And one of the things that I noticed was there were a whole lot of dreams that I'd made note of. And I do have a dream section in my Zettelkasten, and my idea is to eventually capture every dream that I have already written down, wherever it is, because they're scattered across who knows how many notebooks at this point.
Yeah.
Get all of them onto cards and indexed and in the Zettelkasten so that I can maybe see some commonalities and at the very least they're good story ideas, even if nothing else came out of them. But that had actually been a complete black hole up until this process. Like I had the dream category index, but none of the individual dreams. And so I started thinking about that. Like, how do I want to do this? Do I want to set up a separate index for it? Do I want it mingled with my regular index? And I sort of settled on a hybrid because I do want to keep them sort of segregated because if I'm trying to place some academic source, I don't want to be scrolling through dreams because that's not where I'm going to put it. I might link to the dream if it's relevant, but I wouldn't want to put the card there. So what I ended up doing was I used a different color. So my regular index is all white. I chose yellow for the dreams. So it's in my regular index, but it's a different color. And I'm doing the taglines just like normal. So I see all of the dreams that have an A tagline here on this card. So I can check it if I'm trying to file something that's not a dream, but it's not all mixed in. It keeps it separate. And oh, and another interesting thing that I ran into was dreams have a tendency to just sort of change like midstream, like you're doing one thing and then suddenly you're doing something completely else. And you
Yeah.
can't capture that with one tagline. Um,
Oh.
so then I was running into the thing, well, I'm going to have multiple taglines if a dream is that complicated where it just keeps changing. So I've just basically, I use 3x5 cards so that they're smaller. I do fit a lot of text on them. So just basically at the point where the dream changes, then that card gets a different tagline than the first card is how I'm handling it. So far, this has been my last whole week pretty much. I started doing Julianne's Z log, and this is where I started, where most of the entries are in black. And then I started making them in green to indicate dreams. And so the bottom of this is green. And then the entirety of the next page is green, and the entirety of the page after that. So I have done no indexing other than dreams for the last week, basically. But it's been fun.
Oh, this is
Well, the
this is
collective unconscious now knows that it's got your attention again.
Right.
speaking of that. It's a little bit off topic, but I have to ask, and maybe we can come back to it at another point. But how do you have a process by which you remember your dreams?
Um, well, yes and no. At times I have. I'm not currently doing any dream work right now. Like if I have a really interesting or vivid dream, then I'll write it down at this point. Um,
You
there have
have
been
vivid
times
dreams?
I do have vivid dreams sometimes.
Wow.
I have more of them when I'm actually working on them and writing them down. That seems to trigger, your brain to remember more of them. At least that's what I found.
Hmm.
In I think it was in 2013, I was really interested in lucid dreaming, and I was reading about it, and I was trying to do the different techniques to be able to lucid dream. And so I was really writing down my dreams a lot for that as part of that process. And I only managed it like 1.5 times. Like the first time it was almost nothing, and then there was one really interesting one, and then I never managed it again. And something else caught my attention after that, and dream sort of slipped away as a something to work on, especially since I really wasn't making much progress, I felt. Um, but yeah, remember writing down whatever you remember does seem to trigger remembering more. Um, certain very if you spend time in really imaginative states while awake, I find that that tends to trigger more vivid dreams that I remember. Not always, but that does seem to be a precursor a lot of times. But I'm not an expert on dreaming by any means.
No, I just because I wake up and I say I dreamt, but what?
Mm,
You know, and that's and I know I can feel the different intensities, right?
hmm
But intense about what? Going where? Doing
hmm
what? You know, the entire essence of the dream is lost upon opening my eyes. It seems,
hmm
and I just wondered. So that's why.
I'll just add one little thing because I was 40 years old before I learned how to really do anything with my dreams.
Mm.
And what helped me was two things. One is before going to sleep, just setting an intention. I might have an actual question in mind, but if I don't, is I would just set the intention, I'm going to remember my dream. Just gently saying that. I wasn't like, admonishing myself. Just I'm going to remember my dream. So that's one part of the sandwich. Then the dream is the filling. And there's a way that I kind of trained myself to wake up slowly and gently and trying not to get too verbal too quickly. And I developed a kind of an image that it's almost like a ritual in my mind that I do, where if I have that sense of I believe I dreamed, but I don't really remember it, I assume the dream would like for me to remember it.
Mm.
So it's on one side of a bridge. I would like to remember it, and I'm on the other side of the bridge, and I just mentally walk across that bridge. And a lot of times I get met. Not every time, but it's really more of a, you can't force yourself to remember, but you can kind of position yourself to be in a receptive mode. And then a little bing, and then you go, and then you just are able to get it all. It's worth trying. Yeah. I've told that story to other people who've said, I never remember my dreams. And, my therapist said I should do it. And so, well, try this. And a lot of times people said, that really worked for me. Thank you. So, and I just got it from a book, but
There's treasure in books for sure.
no kidding.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, I can try that. The key thing that I heard you say, I mean, you said quite a bit, but the key thing was to wake up gently.
Gently.
And that is the one thing that I don't do is wake up gently. And so that may be the thing that's chasing everything away, because I wake up with an alarm. And that's because, well, I have been, even though I don't have a schedule, I've been trying to give myself a schedule so that I, have a routine, so I know what I'm doing. I don't have to figure out each thing as I'm going. So because I have, create an agenda. And so if I left it to myself at this point, I would just be sleeping. And as opposed to getting up at 5 o'clock, which is what I want to do, 5 a.m. Wake up at 5 a.m., write from, from 5 to, well, write and meditate and do all those other things from 5 to 8. That's what I want to do. Right. But my other self, other part of me wants to sleep until 10 or something. So that's the alarm. But I'm thinking maybe if I go to sleep earlier or try to anyway, even if I'm just laying there, I'll tend to wake up somewhere around 5, and particularly if I intend to wake up.
Yeah, you may find that your brain will helpfully wake you up at 4:30.
That would be nice.
And if you don't immediately look at the clock and see how much more time do I have, all of that stuff, which chases the dream away.
Yeah.
I'd like to stop waking up at 4:30 just while we're making wishes.
Well,
I don't love it.
you can have mine and I'll take yours, okay? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay. Thank you both.
Does anybody want to say anything else about backlogs or indexing the backlog or anything like that before we move on? All right, well then we'll move on to the second part, which is about whether or not we've customized our Zettelkastens. And of course the answer is yes, of course we have customized them because we are a crafty group. But so do you have special pens or cards or dividers? Is there any part of your Zettelkasten that has turned into a craft project? And be prepared to show examples.
All of it? Can I just say all of it?
Well, I've just got one aspect of it, so I will share an example. I was terrified of numbering the cards, and so I developed a system that I started with called clumps and dividers. And I just gave the clumps numbers, and then when I had to break up the clump, I created new numbers that went after that to divide up the clumps more and more and more. Turned out to be a nightmare. I would not recommend it that anybody follow me with this, but as an artifact, it has left me with an enormous number of dividers. Some are useful because I know whereabouts in the file to go look for things. But when this file gets too fat and it's really just about full, I've only got a couple of my divider guys. This is as close as I have to a real craft project, junk mail bound for taking up space. But when that space is gone and I need more space, these dividers are going to start going. That's it. That's all I have.
Well, I could go. I have two things that I thought I might share, so I will share my screen. So I'll be talking. One of them is about memory, and then the other is about music.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Oh, nope, that's not what I meant to do. Get that out. Share a second. Oh, yes, second camera. There we go. Okay. So this is the memory part of this. So here's a card from my index, and it's been promoted to a directory kind of index card because it has that many things in it. And this is craft project in itself, making these little tabs, which if you go to Lily Pub, you can get my template for making the tabs. So this entry right here, Tully Center is home of character traits. So this is pointing, so this awful number can give you a hint why I was really attracted to Kathleen's effortless numbering system. So this is the number where all of my memory palaces that I have created live, where it's just a little map. So here's an example. This is Tully Center. So it's the home of the character traits. And there are 4 places. There's where I've got the balance traits at the info desk. And then there's this corridor to the parking lot where I've got the resilience traits. There's this bookstore here where I've got the insight traits. And then this is the little sort of complex of rooms where I've got the empathy traits. It's the emergency area of this Tully Center, which is a kind of a hospital-ish medical center type thing. Now, this points to my memory journal, which is this fellow here. So this is a craft project in itself because it's a book cover that I make for my, I make these book covers for my journals that I'm going to have composition books inside. And this is cork material that you can sew with, and it's lovely. People make wallets and all sorts of cool things out of it, but I just adore these. So this is my memory journal, and it was pointing to a page in the memory journal, and this is where the full layout of the character traits are. So in that complex where I had the empathy traits, for example, there are 4 rooms. This is from looking at it from a different direction, but we've got, you know, where honor, obedience, and patriotism live. And then we've got, this is all the layout of the empathy traits. And then I've got more notes about, all right, what goes there? So for balance, the thing over the information desk that's about balance, I have a friend named Bala. And so I see him there. He's balancing. He's on a tightrope on a bicycle going behind the info desk. So this is one thing, and this gets indexed, right? So that if I want to know, well, where did I put that? Because sometimes I might forget things. How do I go find my map of all my memory things? If it gets a little stale, I can find it there. So that's one thing. Any questions or comments on this practice?
Fascinating. Definitely. Love that cork material. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You can get it in solid, lots of colors or prints like this, and it's great. So on the music side, this is a different kind of craft project for the card. So I am writing a musical piece, and the piece is based on some verses from Sanskrit, and those verses are presented in a certain way where each verse has a question that kind of sets your mind for what that verse is about. So that a modern day person created those questions. And so one of those questions, for example, is just how unreal are my thoughts? And this is enough of the music to remind me, how did I set that question? You could sing that along. But the point of making the card, it's similar to how you might make it in fiction writing, where you might decide a style guide. How do I want to, what literary technique do I want to use as the voice of this particular character, right? And so in this case, I'm saying reciprocal harmony serves as a metaphor for unreality. Reciprocal harmony, I won't get into the details of that, but it's the sort of thing where there's some kinds of harmony that just feel like it's out in the world, and then there are other kinds of harmony that human beings actually need to generate, and that reciprocal harmony is one of those. And so I'm using that as a metaphor for unreality. And this melody is written using reciprocal harmony. So just being able to read that back, I'm going to remember that whole intention, not just for this verse, but for other verses where they might be talking about unreality.
Wow.
And this is borrowing from Victoria. We've got pink here. In my mind, this particular thing, I've got a kind of a quasi story that I'm building as the programmatic basis of this piece. It may never see the light of day in the concert hall, which, Lord willing, it'll make it there someday. But yeah, my main female character is the person that this little part of it is written around.
Very cool.
Wow. Impressive.
Extremely cool.
Oh, and the way I got those little staves on there,
Mm-hmm.
how I set this out. I printed it on mailing labels for a business that is not in business anymore. So I printed just blank
Nice.
staves, and I can cut them out. And this happens to be one that I printed the music on because I'd already written it. But I also will just write with my pencil on these too and stick them on a card when the idea is still just sketchy.
Yeah,
Very good. Wow. Fantastic.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love how you use it with music. That's just so cool.
Well, and
I'm still exploring that, but yeah, I've always written music with kind of an outline that sort of just gave me ground, like what an outline does, right? It just helps you. And I've always done that from even being a kid. And what I would do is just like write the outline on the score or whatever as a note. And this is my first attempt to try to do it in the other direction as well. It's not like the outline isn't lost in digital score land.
Cool.
I think in a general way, it's really interesting what you're doing here with printing out these small pieces that you're going to be using over and over again onto these labels, because I could see how that could be extended. Like, for example, you could make the character profile diagram and print out a bunch of those, and then you can just stick them on there and then add the traits where they go without having to draw. I mean, it's not hard to draw, but it's cool to have. It would be cool to have that just sitting there if you were doing a lot of them. So
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'll think of other ways to use it as well. So that's really interesting. I like that. Thank you.
Maybe some Lily Pub merch to come.
That's right. Our next product.
All right.
Well, since Julianne admitted to washi taping, so obviously all of my character cards get washied or highlighted based on their character color. So for various projects, everything I have is color coded in some way, because it just looking at everything plain, and it's funny, I have a constant battle with myself looking at everything perfect and pristine and no colors, that's like my dream person. Like, they say you should set your intentions and your goals for the person that you actually are, not the person your dream person. But my problem, when I look at something like that, even if it's just a huge page of text, it's very easy for me to get lost in it. And so I have just found, especially as I embarked on the process of writing a novel trilogy, I needed visual things to help me break it all up, because I would just look at something and have no idea what it was. So that carried over 1,000% into the way I built out my Zettelkasten. So certainly using color in any way that I could, just to designate things, like even, the tabs for my Scots class are all shades of kind of gray and pastel. So I know at a glance that that's what that is. Whereas over in my novel section, those are all like bolder colors. So like here, I don't know if you can tell, but like that. So this is actually 2 note cards. One is a recipe card and one is a note card that's taped to the back of it so that it stands up taller in the box, so that I know that's where this book begins. So I do a lot of that, just a lot of either making things stand up. I use old postcards. I use old greeting cards that people have sent me. I just recycle them into either tabs or dividers or something, because it's kind of cool when you're flipping around looking for something and you run across, like, one of my favorite markers is this.
Oh.
Do you recognize it? It's a postcard that Mel sent me when we had our postcard round robin.
Fair enough.
So, and I just love it. I think it's a beautiful botanical drawing. And so it's like when I'm flipping for something or I need to mark a place, Kathleen calls them out cards, where I've taken cards out and it serves as a marker. It's like running across my friends in my box.
Yeah.
So I do that a lot. And then of course, it's no secret that I cut my cards in half and book ring them. There are certain collections of things that in my mind, they need to stay together. And so those get either book ringed or hole punched and stuck together. This is made off of magazine pages it's either Harper's Bazaar or Travel and Leisure, because those pages are nice and thick. So I use a lot of magazine pages. Oh, this is an Angela Scott catalog where I buy my shoes. So yeah, nothing goes unrecycled somewhere in here. Then of course, probably my biggest departure craft project was the way that I built my index, because I built it in a book and then used Kathleen's little ribbon is my marker. I dust jackets on hardcover books are something I really want to love, but I hate reading books with them because they're always flipping around. So instead, I tend to cut them off and use them as page dividers. One of my all-time favorite books. So that's just the beginning divider where my blank paper starts in my index. And then of course I have hole punched a bunch of cards that mark collections in my index. So lots of hole punching, lots of color coding. And then the last thing that I'll share, when I first started laying out the timeline for book 1 of my novel series, I needed a way that, again, I have a real thing with keeping things together. I don't like things to get separated and spread out, especially with note cardy things, because it's too easy for me to tuck them somewhere and never find them again. So things that I need to always think about together, I have to find a way to keep them together. So that was when I started using my washi tape to create little folios. So I just washi tape these little booklets together, and some of them go 6, 7, 8 cards out, and I just accordion fold them up. And that's just another way that I've invented of keeping things together that need to stay together for whatever I'm working on. I think that's probably the last major weird thing that I do is connecting cards together into some kind of bundle or group, because I need them to stay together. And then I do these a lot. These little booklets are something that I learned a million years ago, but this is actually a piece of paper. These are the notes that I took on a call that I sat on Saturday with an author. I was helping her figure out her story. And I knew I would need a whole page to do it. A note card wouldn't suffice. So once I'm finished, I just fold it and score it, and it becomes a little book, and it lives under her name in my bib box.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So,
Whoa, that is great.
So here's what you
It's a
do.
Zettelzine.
I knew you were going to want the template. So here's what you do. You take one piece of paper, you fold it lengthwise in half. Okay. Then you fold it crossways. So you're making a short side fold and a long side fold. So you have an X. All right. Then you fold after you've got, I'll do it this way because it goes in. After you've got that center fold, you're going to fold your two edges in. Okay. So what you want to end up with is one sheet of paper that's folded into 8 equal parts, right? So you're folding it down the center, and then each of those ends in. And then you just go back to your half fold and you cut one section down. And then you fold it over, you open up the middle, and that's what makes your book. So all you need is you can take any piece of paper, fold it into 8 equal sections, fold it in half and cut the middle, and then just collapse it and make it into your book. And the cool thing is it's reversible. So if I fill up the inside real estate, I can reverse it and turn it the other direction by making it go the other way. And then I can have a second side. You can do it on both sides. It's reversible. So when I travel, I won't go into this, but when I travel, I always make about half a dozen of these in different sizes. And that's often what my travel journals are made out of. So I just always have a little booklet with me. And then I can file it under the name of the person. Like in this case, it goes under Smith for Christy in my big box. Or it can get indexed and numbered and then go just fold it up and live wherever it needs to live in the box. So that's probably one of the weirdest things that I do is if I need to break the note card rule, I use my little fold up books as a way to get that page to fit into the note box where I need it.
Wonderful.
Craft on.
Yeah. You're our scout leader.
Yeah. I'll inject here, since Victoria mentioned it, I do make these little out cards that just say the word out on them. And when I pull a card from my Zettelcast, and I leave this behind so I don't have to hunt it again. And then I created this one with just some washi tape and that I use when I'm indexing because it's big and it stands out. And when I want to add, look for a term in my index, I just plunk this in. I pull out a whole section and then, put pieces of it back. This comes in handy.
I think you already know this. If I can lay my hands on it quickly, I will, but I don't know if I can. For character cards, I also often pull, like this is in my mind what the bedroom of my main female character looks like. So I've made my notes, I've changed things that she would have on her night table or her bookshelf, and those are either from magazines or I collage them together, and those just get stapled to a note card that then lives in her character card. So that is something else visual that I do, because sometimes I want to go back and see that environment. So I just build it out, either collage or clip it and fold it and stuff it in there.
Deb, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I'm just in awe of all these nice, wonderful, crafty things. But I mean, other than what I actually showed earlier, where I made in an effort to stop spending so much money on these little books. Um, I made this cover myself, and with my plunger uh Levenger hole punch, I became a little bit overzealous, and it punched a hole right here at the tip. I don't know if you can see that. So then I said, okay, I can color code this, and this book will forever and henceforth. Can you see the little yellow tab?
Yeah.
Uh, I'll be using this for my budget, and and the yellow says okay, this is attention, money, you know.
Mm.
And so I've kept up with that, or I created that, and I'm using these purchased indexes for it. But the idea is I could certainly use Julianne's tabs, those tabs that she made for that, and save money in another way. So, but I don't have any gorgeous tidbits like the kind of that you guys have shared. My gosh, no. But I mean, it's rubbing off on me, so thank you again. No.
Yeah, Victoria's a tough one to follow. But um, my main, well, I've got a couple things that I do. One thing is I do slightly oversized cards out of various thick pieces, like Victoria does postcards, or um, we have a bunch of wallpaper samples.
Oh yeah.
From you can get them from an interior decorator, because when it's a new season, they get new books of samples. They just want to get rid of the old ones. So we've got books and books of them with wallpaper, fabric, you know. My husband has made quilts out of the fabric. I mean, it's been
Awesome.
fun. So this bit of wallpaper was actually used to wrap a present for me, and I liked it, so I kept it and glued bits of it onto cards. So now I've got these nice cards, and I just use these as dividers. I've got, before Julianne posted her template for the tabs, I bought some tabs to stick on.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I've got a bunch of those, and like I use those for um, if I'm just if I want to mark something within my Zettelkasten that I have to go to a bunch, I make a tab for that. I've got in my writing section, writing project section, I've got each of the main projects with a bigger card and a tab. Um,
Mhm.
I just recently cleaned out my high school writing record, which I had stored in a bunch of folders from the 90s, like this one,
Nice.
in a binder. That I've been carrying that thing around for, how long has it been? Almost 30 years. And I'm setting up a file system to hold all of my writing that I have. And so I'm like, all right, I'll toss these things in there and get them out of these ratty old binders and folders. But some of them were not too ratty. I mean, I wouldn't use them again, but I couldn't stand to throw them away. So I've been cutting them up and making more of those cards. Um,
Nice.
with, fractals were big in the 90s. So I got some
Oh
fractal
yeah.
ones. um, and then the other thing that I like to do is I actually have a gardening section in my Zettelkasten, where I do my best, especially in the spring, not so much in the summer when things get busy, of keeping track of what I've planted and which varieties and how they're doing and when I got the seeds, where they came from, all of that. But at the beginning of the different varieties, I don't have this for all of them, but I have cut out information from the seed catalog that it came from. So I've got pictures of what the things actually look like. This is from the actual seed packet once I emptied it. So I've added some of that. Not all of the varieties have pictures yet, but I'm working on it.
That's awesome. I never thought to do that. Mine are all in a 3-ring binder and it's just a mess. I should totally, that's a great idea.
I can write up what I've done so far and to give you something to start with, a platform.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room to continue to innovate, but I've figured a few things out, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it.
Cool.
It's funny how we all find ways to integrate, you know, the nerdy things we like, things that are fascinating, things that make it more aesthetic, you know, to what we like. It's just funny to me how we just find ways to integrate these other pieces of our lives into this simple system. I just think it's so cool.
I do have one more thing to share from the garden. So I have a bunch of different garden beds, small ones, in my small yard. But what I've got is a master map of each one, showing where it's at and where it's located, and the
Mhm.
directions. And then after that, I have snapshots, I call them, where I show what's planted there at that time and where they're located, what varieties, so that I can sort of go through and go, oh, I had this here at this time, and it helps with crop rotation, which is hard to do in a small yard. I don't have a lot of space, and just remembering, like, this garden has turned into an overgrown jungle. Where is this thing? So, because I tend
Does
to think too
anyone
close.
else track garden stuff? I'm just curious. No.
Black, both
I
of
have
them.
I have a book. It's all right. Okay. See, now you're forcing me. You're forcing me, Mel. All right. So in my family, all the women in my family are journalists in some way. And it was passed on to me. I lost my mom 24 years ago. She died when my daughter was a baby. And I was instructed by her older sister that it was now my job to do what in my family we call the book. So I'm an only child. I'm the oldest of all of my cousins. So this is the book I chose. It's a Thomas O'Brien scrapbooking book. And so what I did was, in the tradition of my mother, and I won't go through the whole thing, but I started simply with each garden that I had at the time and kind of sketched them out and did what you do, Mel. I took, botanical drawings and seed packets and different recipes and how they were used by the family. And so and I even did a couple of years, I did pressings of different things that were either growing or that didn't work. I have the pressings of no fewer than 5 Venus flytraps that I killed. So then we get up into here. This one's from 2022 when my garden got really big. It's huge out in the back. And so I just watercolored in what I did for each thing. And then the other thing that gets recorded in here is every year for Thanksgiving and Christmas, I record what we made for the meal and what came out of the garden. So, and then the second half of the book is a recipe section. So like this is for my mom's, she called it her mush push casserole. So that is the garden book, and I'm sweating. But yeah, it's a beast. And so my children are already fighting over who gets it. I'm like, guys, I'm still here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love what you're doing, putting it in the note box, but I'm like, how would I'll have to think about how I would workflow. I mean, I could still do the layout in the book, and then I love keeping track of seeds and what worked and what didn't and that kind of stuff in the Zettelcast, and that makes so much more sense than trying to do it in a book and remember where to find it and,
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
I
well,
would
you can
suggest,
reference the book. You could reference the pages of the
Yeah.
book anywhere. Yeah.
right.
yeah, it
I-
never occurred to me.
I was helping someone who had a number of lesson designs for courses that she was doing that were on big fold-out sheets of paper, and she had them all in files. So I suggested that she take a photograph of the page, and when you shrink it down to a card size, you're not going to be able to read it, but you're going to be able to recognize it by its shape and color. And
Yeah,
then from
yeah,
there,
yeah.
you indicate, well, what's the file name?
That's
Good
good.
idea.
So
That's
you could do
good.
something like that. Then you could file those and you'd know what page to go to find the thing you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's
Why
awesome.
don't we collect over on lilypub.org in our Roanoke section, which is where we discuss with our fellow Lilligans, the fellow members of lilypub.org, what's going on with our Roanoke story. We could put some of our little crafty projects out there. How you folded your booklet, how I created my divider card, my slip-in divider card. Julianne, you've already shared your tabs. Maybe you could make a copy over there as well.
Sure.
And whatever we have that we want to share with others, we could put it there and give people another reason to come to lilypub.org.
You betcha.
Great. Well, thank you,
This
everybody.
was super fun.
It sure was.
All right. Well, who do we want to, who wants to volunteer to lead next week?
I've lost
Um,
track of who's
yeah.
up.
I can go if it's so. The last time I went was right around New Year's. I'm happy to go again if it's not.
When I don't remember when mine was. Isn't that awful?
Mine
Or I can.
January
Either way.
6th.
Was
That
Okay,
was-
Victoria, why don't you go and I'll plan on doing it the following week.
okay. What's the? Oh no, I'm good. Yeah, that works.
February 3rd.
Our first one in February.
Yeah.
All right.
Hmm.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Victoria. And so until next week,
Yeah.
we will see you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna stop this recording. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.